And as I said earlier, I have a soft spot for you folks in my heart because you kept me company through the formation and launch of my book. And even though I gave you one thoroughly depressing sermon, you still invited me back. I promise not to be depressing today. I wanted to branch out and preach on a different book called Hospicing Modernity by Vanessa Andreotti, although the last name will appear different, and I meant to bring it, but I forgot. I tried to make a sermon out of that book, and I did not manage it. I could not get it to preach, but it did produce a poem, so there you go. I keep clarifying my message in the book, and I keep getting to try it out on you. So maybe someday you'll be preaching it to me. But here's the current version in a nutshell. I do believe that hard times are coming. Economic, ecological, social. What can we do to serve life in hard times? Well, we can grow our roots deep. We can open our hearts wide. And we can step forward with humble actions, not to save the world, but to love it and care for it. Our society doesn't teach us those things, I think, so we get to learn and practice them together. Because people are going to panic and people are going to despair, and it's to those of us who have deep roots, who are committed to action, who are willing to open our hearts, to reach out, to make a difference. Because whatever is happening on the outside, we get a chance to hold love and peace in our hearts, and it makes a difference. So, what do I mean by deep roots? Well, here's a quote from a book I wrote. A sense of self that can withstand the disruptions we face is found in wider and deeper identities than modernity has to offer. A secure sense of belonging to a family, community, place, culture, or spiritual tradition is an anchor in the storm of climate and social chaos. A sense of belonging, deep roots. So I have in me these stories of modernity, the one with the most wins, you know that one? Ever progressing, compound interest, the more you have, the more you need. Those things play in me, and they play in really strange ways, like I need to do more service, and more service, and more service. I'm human, you know? But underneath those stories of modernity is something older and deeper. It's the stories of Jesus. And I go straight to the source, and I take everything with a grain of salt, and then I go into prayer, into meditation, into the real. And what I discover there is not your reality, but it's my reality and my deep truth. And it sustains me and it roots me deep. So now I want to ask you, what are your deep roots? Spiritual, relational roots, or maybe they're principles. And this is not a rhetorical question, I'm actually asking you to speak up. And I know for white people in a sermon that's almost impossible, but give it a try. Family. Family roots you. Friends and yoga. Yeah. Community and nature. Yeah, and boy, nature is a big one for a lot of us. Dogs. The mediators of unconditional love to humans. Yeah, and play. Music. Yes, we have to have music in our worship services. Compassion, that guiding value. books, reading, the ability to enter worlds and realities beyond our everyday through the wonder of books. Wow, thanks, you guys did really well at that. Okay, so, and of course, as Unitarians, you know that there's not one right way to do this. It's what works for you, and if what you're doing isn't working, for goodness sake, try something else until you find something that does work. Yes, I'll have to wait and see what happens when, so the question is open to people on Zoom. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so deep roots. Nurture those roots. Don't pretend that, so one lone human is just not very strong or resilient. We need to grow our roots deep. We need to remember that we're part of a vast network of love and care, however that looks to you. And what do I mean by open hearts? Now, it could be kind of trivial, but that's not what I mean. I have a quote by Brené Brown to start Open Hearts. Compassion is not a virtue, it is a commitment. It's not something we have or don't have. It's something that we choose to practice. And the harder the situation is, the harder it is to keep your compassion, and nobody can do it 100% of the time. Maybe some saints, but you know, I'm not a saint, and I don't expect to preach to any. So, an open heart has often been broken open by pain and suffering, experiencing it or witnessing it. When you experience it, there you are. There's not much you can do about it. When you witness it, you may have a choice to turn it off, to run away, and you may have to exercise that choice if you're overwhelmed, if you're just unable to deal with it. But compassionate witnessing, accompanying people in their pain, that's an open heart when you can manage it. And we can't, the pain of the world is too vast for our little tribal minds. You know, we can deal with pain of a group of people about this big, right? And it matters that we go and find people who are not in our little social circle, so that our heart is opened to people in very different circumstances than ourselves. And for me, that has been people who are living out of their cars and pretending that they're not. And it has been people who are immigrants facing deportation. And people who, well, one gentleman who waited 6 years in county jail before he got his trial. 6 years. He has 3 little kids, but they're not so little now. That's heart opening, and it hurts like hell. And you don't have to do it all the time. But once you do, there's a camaraderie of broken hearts. And if you have to do it alone, you might shatter. But when we do it in community, when we share our pain, when we grieve together, weep together, we can hold so much more love. And we weep because we love. We grieve because we love. And I'm pretty sure you've heard me say that one before. An open heart knows how to let the emotions pass through and not get stuck for too long, meshed up with grief and, with shoulds and guilt and blame, because those things happen, but they do not serve an open heart. They clog up our heart, and so we learn to release them. So there's a skill to having an open heart, and there's a lot of courage to having an open heart. Those who in our modern age will not hold suffering in their hearts, who will not grieve, are living in a polite fantasy, kind of detached from the real world. The rest of us are frequently stuck facing moral distress. How on earth can that happen? And not knowing how to fix it, but holding and loving anyway. We need your brave and open hearts. We need a little acceptance that it matters. Even if we can't fix something, it matters that we witness it, that we hold the pain, that we love. Holding all that we cannot save in our hearts, they may break open, but our tears will water the web of life, and our fears are composted into new beginnings somewhere. As we reach out in trust, we will take humble actions. And that word humble is there for a reason, because I'm having a real issue with all the things that I think I should be able to accomplish. You know, I should just be able to fix this political situation and all these terrible things that are happening, and I just can't. And you may think you can, and more power to you, but I'm really struggling with all that I can't fix. So here's some words on humble action from Václav Havel. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something is worth doing, no matter how it turns out. We do what we can, whether or not it seems futile by the success orientation of modernity. Maybe we can't save something, but we can savor it. We can know that it's worth loving and proclaiming justice and shining a light, because the world needs your light. Even if it seems like too small a light, it's a tiny, beautiful, essential light of love and justice in this world. So do something beautiful, do something loving, do the right thing for you. Don't let somebody else tell you what to do. There's too many things to do. Oh my God, there are too many things to do. You don't have to do everything, and you don't have to do somebody else's calling, but it sure is fun to do stuff together. So I am currently on a project of figuring out what I can stop doing. Meanwhile, I keep thinking of new things to do. One thing I started doing recently was hanging out with my neighborhood's sustainability committee. Now, isn't it a gift that we even have a sustainability committee? And here I am, the grumpy one who says, well, you know, it's not really sustainable. But you know what was the first thing those gracious women did? They said, let's have a book study of your book. Amazing. I was so honored and gifted. And they struggled, and they disagreed sometimes, and they agreed other times, and together we learned a lot. And then the next thing we did was we were grousing about the universities building denser faculty housing. Okay, so they tore down some old apartments, kind of wasteful, but you know how it goes. But they also tore down all the trees surrounding them. These were not old growth trees, only 50 years old at max. But we loved those trees. They were our friends. We greeted them every day as we walked to and from work on campus at UCI. So I said, how about if we have a grief ritual for the trees? And they said yes. And they planned it. I didn't have to. And about 18 people came, and we cried, and we mourned, and some people said angry words, and we lit candles. We did not change the trees. The trees were already gone. But we honored the trees. We thanked the trees. And we committed to seeing, because the next 2 plots that are due for renewal, maybe we can save a few trees on those plots. So, humble actions Maybe we can't save any trees on those plots, but we can just tell people trees matter. They're not like sidewalks that you can just dig up whenever you feel like it. Give them a little respect, please. Doesn't change the world, but it changes our hearts. It changes our relationship to the world. So do something countercultural. Befriend a tree. Advocate for something, whether or not you're able to save it. Tend and befriend instead of acquiring and achieving. Invest in relationships. Invest in places and people. And throw a party and invite people you barely know. So that's humble actions. By the way, throwing parties is definitely what followers of Jesus should be doing, because that's what he did. Deep roots, open hearts, humble actions. This is my offering to you of how to have compassion in hard times. That's my message. Let me know how it works out for you. And